1270. It's time for Talk of the Town with Steve Bakken on SuperTalk 1270.
Good morning. I am not Steve Bakken. My name is Dustin Gawrylow. I am the managing director of the North Dakota Watchdog Network, amongst other things. And I am filling in for Steve today and on Monday. Today we've got a pretty good lineup. We're going to first go talk to Tom Briggle of the big Bismarck Bobcats. And then after that, we will be talking to a few other folks. Amanda Peterson is a candidate for Bismarck School Board. Rick Guion is the director of the North Dakota Voters First organization, and Ann Richardson is the spokesman for the Friends of the Rail Bridge. And so first off, we're going to go over to Tom Briggle with the Bismarck Bobcats. And Tom, how's it going today?
Going great, Dustin. It's a good thing some of us are working while others are basking in the sun, eh?
Right. Yeah. You know, that's how it goes. And when you leave, you can't complain about what people say about you, right?
No, absolutely. I was just texting with them, with Steve, that is, of course, and seems like they're enjoying themselves. Well, they probably have about a 70-degree difference than you and I. Maybe more. At least. And obviously, you and I both know how many hours Steve puts in on all his various things, and so he deserves it. And Wendy.
Yep, absolutely. So I don't know much about the Bismarck Bobcats, so I'm going to leave most of it to you to talk about. And so what's going on with the team there, and what's your business?
I don't know, but I have to tell you that not knowing too much of the Bobcats, we're going to have to change that. I got to get you up to a game, and even if you don't know hockey, do you like cold beer?
Yeah, absolutely.
Okay, we can be friends.
I'm your typical American baseball, football guy. Never got into really hockey or basketball, so those are where I've always been at.
Yep. You don't know what you're missing, but you're going to find out. I'm going to get you up to a game, and you're going to have a revelation. How about that?
Awesome. Sounds good.
I've not met you. Are you a North Dakota boy?
I sure am. I grew up in Zap.
Oh, you did? Zip to Zap. That was before you were born.
Oh, yeah. 13 years before I was born.
Yeah, for sure. So that's my generation. I'm a Mandan boy, and I grew up in as a teenager in the 70s. So Zip to Zap was kind of the thing at the time. But, well, hey, Bobcat hockey. So, yeah, thanks for having me on. Just wanted to update the fans a little bit. So the Bobcats are on a roll, and if people have been out to the games, I think, Dustin, we're in last place still, and we're the best last place team probably in the history of the world, and the boys are really fun to watch. So we're about 4 points out of playoffs, and we're on a 7-0 run. And aside from that, the stands have just been full, and they've been great, and we're having a good time. And, Dustin, our role in the fans, some of the fans that are listening probably know, is to get boys college scholarships, opportunities to play Division I hockey, much like the Fighting Hawks. And so this week, two of our guys snagged Division I scholarships. And a kid by the name of Rudrud's going to be going to the University of Alaska Fairbanks. And Ryan Taylor is going to be going to Clarkson, which is also a phenomenal school and a hockey program. So it's been good. We're having a lot of fun, without a doubt. Tonight we go to Aberdeen, and the boys will be jumping on the bus in a couple hours and head on down to Aberdeen for a game tonight and the game tomorrow as well. So we can win them both. We can just nudge that much closer to playoffs. And for those of your listeners that are following, we started out really tough, but boy, are we a good team right now. So we're excited.
Yeah, and obviously being an underdog sometimes is a benefit because you can kind of sneak up on your opponents and catch them by surprise.
Yeah, we are. I think that when our streaks, like we're 12-3, I think, and so when our streak started, we'd have one of the opponents, like in Austin, and talk to their owner. He says, my boys are overconfident, and I don't know. I didn't really want to say anything, but the fact of the matter is, we're a better team. So we kicked their butt, and we've kind of been kicking people's butt on the ice lately. So we are, in fact, a really good team, and I am going to have to try to get you out to a game. I also grew up in Mandan, was a baseball and a football guy, but, hockey is my life now. It's just a passion, and it's such a great sport. And then aside from that, it's just a good time. Sometimes people say, I don't know, I've never been to a Bobcat game. I don't know anything about hockey. And I just said, well, do you like to have fun? Because really, it doesn't matter if you know the rules. There's really only about 3 or 4 of them, but I just, who cares? If you like to have fun and you like to be with your family, your friends, and if you like noise. If you don't like noise, you need to stay home because we're a noisy operation, and it's quite the party. And the hockey, of course, is really off the charts. I think people are coming to understand that these young boys, they're 16 to 20, that they're getting some opportunities. We placed I think 45 kids now in 2 years, Division I hockey, and they're from all over the world. The level of hockey is just, it's outstanding. And so I don't want to take your whole day. It sounds like you have a great lineup, but I do appreciate you sneaking me in. And I look forward to meeting you. In the meantime, like I said, we're at Aberdeen this week, and next week we're at Minot for a pair, and then we'll be back in Bismarck, and we got a big weekend against the number 1 team, and we're really looking forward to that. That's the 25th and 26th, so we're excited about that.
Well, that is good to hear. 12-3 and in last place. That's interesting math. Is that divisions versus league type of a situation?
Well, no, it's not actually. Almost, that's a good question. All of our games are virtually in our division, and but we started out the year 3-14. We, last year we played so many kids that were really young, like a lot of 17-year-olds. But the other thing is we had 5 guys back, and I think 4 of them were injured all the way up almost till Christmas and later. So we had some challenges, but now, knock on wood, our team is healthy, and we're just a good team. Like, Steve and I have been talking over the course of the season, and we just believe in this team. We think we have a really good group of players and boys, but we just have, like I said, not been healthy. So more recently, since we got healthy in January, we've just been on fire, and the boys are getting a little swagger, a little appropriate level of strut that, if you follow sports, that's important, right?
Oh, yeah.
And so did you play a little bit, by the way?
I did not play much for organized sports. I was too scrawny to be any good at sports and uncoordinated as well. So it didn't go over well.
But honest as hell you are. You're honest about it, and you've found your niche behind the mic and other things, right?
Yeah. Jack of all other trades.
Yeah, and there's no problem with that either.
I was much better at playing Madden on PS2. That was sort of the thing. So the virtual sports.
Yeah. Well, I think they just came out with a new version again. I guess they do probably every year, right?
Oh yeah. I haven't played in almost 20 years either. That once you start working and having a job, it's tough to play a lot of video games.
Well, it is, and I've never played Madden. My kids did. I'm 62, so Dustin, I remember being excited as hell when Pong came out.
Yeah.
I mean, that was the best in them. It was really dynamic. you could actually change the size of the paddle.
Yeah.
Have you ever seen pong?
Oh, yeah. I played the old style. I grew up on 486s and old Macs and stuff, so I
you did?
Yeah. So I was exposed to the old original tech a lot more than some people my age, and so yeah, I definitely appreciated that, and that it would speed up as you got through the levels and that sort of thing.
Yeah, it would a little bit. So at that time, it was in black and white, right?
Yeah.
So
I did play a lot of air hockey in the arcade as a kid, so that's my hockey experience.
Oh
yeah. That was
totally different. You don't. The good news is you don't have to skate.
Right. Exactly.
Yeah. Well, all the games are. I don't know. They're just that's fun in games, particularly in the world that we live in. Right. We're all adapting and moving on and keeping smiling and trying to have fun. And we've noticed that this post-COVID, if it is post-COVID, but the fans, for example, and all of us, they just feel like they need to have and want to have some fun. And so we're just seeing it kind of come back to pre-COVID levels. And people just need to have fun in this complicated world that we live in, not to get on a soapbox that way, but you just got to kind of keep breathing and putting one foot in front of the other. And then you got to look for some time to have fun and appreciate things. So we're the beneficiary of that right now because people are looking to have fun, and hopefully the rest of this stuff that is going on in the world comes to a peaceful ending here, right?
Yeah, absolutely. You can't take life too seriously 24/7, or else you won't last very long.
No, you just gotta have a little bit of fun. I heard your intro, and again, I want to take your whole day, but I like the mic too. I'm like you, maybe. But you're on Watch. I don't know what that is.
I am a political consultant, and Watchdog Network is I keep an eye on government, basically, and lobby at the legislature, and basically promote lower taxes, less spending, less government, more transparency, more voter and citizen input in the process, and so just overall governmental oversight, basically from the private sector.
See, you need to be a hockey fan, and then we'd have everything in common.
Exactly. Well,
I'm not a government guy.
Yeah.
They kind of they need to stay the hell out.
Yeah.
And then we can get a lot more done more efficiently, right?
Absolutely. Well, I'm getting the notice to go to break here, and so good talking to you. We'll have to connect, and I'll have to get a pass to get into your game there.
Yeah, no, I'm going to get after you because I know you're going to like it, and thanks for what you're doing as well. It's important stuff.
Absolutely.
So, thanks for having me. I look forward to meeting you.
Yep, sure thing. Well, with that, we're going to take a quick break here early and go to Jason Spies until our second guest. My name is Dustin Gawrylow, and I'm filling in for Steve Bakken for Talk on the Town.
Talk of the Town with Steve Bakken on SuperTalk 1270. Talk of 70. Welcome back to Talk of the Town with Steve Bakken on SuperTalk 1270.
Yeah, good morning again. This is Dustin Gawrylow filling in for Steve Bakken. We've got a jam-packed show. On the line with us now is Jason Spies. Jason is a radio guy you've heard here on SuperTalk before, filling in for Steve, and on with Steve, I'm sure. And as Jason knows, when you're doing radio, sometimes you are worried about not having enough content, and then you have too much, right, Jason?
Well, you got to roll with the punches, man. In radio, it's like, and Randy knows this firsthand, it's like changing the oil while driving 90 miles an hour down the interstate. It's just the way it goes sometimes, and that's actually the way a lot of the oil and gas industry is, too, is Sometimes they'll say, I'll call you back in 5 minutes, and 2 weeks later, there you go, and all kinds of stuff. But, man, it's been a busy, busy week here. In fact, we are on Sunday mornings on Super Talk as well with the Crude Life. And this week, the Crude Life has been down in Oklahoma. We presented Johnny Green, the Earth's champion, came with us, and he presented fourth graders. They talked about a little ethical energy. We even showed some Bakken crude, and the kids got to see the color, how it starts out kind of murky green, and the closer you get, it turns into an amber red, and the look on their face gets all big. Even took a Greta Thunberg question there in the fourth grade amongst the fourth graders, so we had to tackle that one. It went really well. And then later we went to Tulsa, Oklahoma, where I did a ESG University curriculum. So we had about 75 people show up for a luncheon, and then after the luncheon, we did a ESGU seminar. And actually, what I'm working on right now, Dustin, if you don't mind, I mean, I'll give you the scoop. You want the scoop?
Absolutely.
This is breaking news. You ready for this breaking news? First time ever uttered on any airwave, any podcast, any blog post, is blog even a word? Any social media post, you name it, ESGU.com will be launched next week.
Wow, that is amazing. I'm filling in for Stephen Monday as well, and I think that I don't have the show filled out. We might have to actually do a full-length segment with you on that if you're ready for prime time, and just so that everybody knows what that's about, and gets an idea of what that's about. There's the whole ESG topic is so broad it could take an hour or two to cover in any real sense, and there's a lot of misunderstandings and propaganda on both sides of that issue.
How much time do we got till the clock? How much time?
About a minute and a half. I think.
Okay, so I'm going to interrupt you real quick.
Yeah.
What we're going to start with is we're going to start from what we believe is the beginning. We believe the beginning of where we're at today started with Harry the Dirty Dog. Remember that book that we all read as a kid?
No.
Okay, look it up.
Okay.
Look it up. You got a little white beagle with black spots,
yeah,
and he goes out and he plays in the coal chutes and in the crude oil, and he comes back and he gets rejected and not recognized by his family. So while the adults were enjoying giant and jet clampets, the kids were learning on a very university level, meaning that if we gave this to the University of Bismarck, University of Mary, Dickinson State, NDSU, I would get back a 40-page thesis paper on this, without a doubt. When you look at the cover, it's even a yin and a yang, a black and a white, evil versus good type of a thing. So that's going to be our first column with ESG University, which is also going to have video, podcasts, et cetera, et cetera. Dustin, we've been working on this for 5 years.
Oh, yeah.
So it's finally happening, and we're getting very excited. So ESG University launches next week. I didn't even plan on talking about that, but since we're kind of rolling with the punches and we're going with it, I figured, what the heck, man, how much time we got? That's got to be a minute and a half.
Yeah, absolutely. That's great, and we'll touch base, and I'll have to talk over the weekend and figure out where we're at from the Monday show. And with that, next segment, I'm going to be talking to a local candidate for Bismarck School Board. If anybody wants to call in, our studio number is 701-663-1270. And, we'll be talking about what's going on at the Bismarck School Board. It's been a lot of contentious issues there. And this hour of Talk of the Town has been brought to you by Dvorak Motors, where your family for a lifetime. Big boy, get in line, it moves fast. And HIT Incorporated, independence, dignity, respect, HIT Incorporated. I'll be right back. This is Dustin Gawrylow filling in for Steve Bakken.
Talk of the Town with Steve Bakken on Super Talk 1270. Talk of the Town with Steve Bakken. Weekday mornings starting at 9 on Super Talk 1270 and the free Super Talk 1270 mobile app. Talk of the Town with Steve Bakken on Super Talk 1270.
Good morning again. My name is Dustin Gawrylow. I am filling in for Steve Bakken. Next up, we've got Amanda Peterson, who is running for Bismarck School Board. If you have any questions for Amanda, the studio line here is 701-663-1270. Amanda, how are you doing today?
I'm doing great. Good morning.
Good morning to you. You're one of the few guests that I've had in my short time of guest hosting shows that I don't know beforehand. So we're meeting for the first time together. And why don't you open up by telling us a little bit about yourself and why you decided to run for Bismarck School Board?
Thanks, Dustin, and it's great to meet you as well. And I've been in education all my life, and it's been a passion of mine, and it's been something that's been on my heart for a while that I would be interested in running for school board. I've worked as a teacher for almost 15 years. I taught high school English in a number of places. I graduated from Bismarck High School, then went to college here in UND. I'm actually in Grand Forks today for a hockey tournament for my son. So I'm very nostalgic being up here because I don't come up here all that often. And then my career kind of took me to Seattle. Then it took me to Denver. And then I moved back a couple of years ago once my children were going to be, I have 3 boys, and they were going to be school-age kids. And me and my husband, both Bismarck natives, wanted to come back and raise our children in Bismarck in that school system. And so both of us were born and raised there as well. And so I just think that I taught English, and I was able to get into Bismarck High School. Now it was, I think, around like 2012. And taught there for a few years, and then I became a dean of students and an instructional coach, and then kind of life moved on in some of the leadership positions, and now I work at the Department of Public Instruction in the Office of Educational Improvement and Support. I'm a director there, and so education is just always something that I care so deeply about, and I get to influence state politics. But what I don't get to do is, I have less ability to work directly with my school system, and my boys are old enough. I feel like I'm at a place in my personal life and my professional career that this is just a natural next step.
Yeah, and obviously, if you're with your professional role, you probably spend a little bit of time down at the legislature, like I do. Mm-hmm. And any time that you get into education, it's kind of a dicey situation in multiple ways, because you've got legislators who want to do certain things and be perceived as supportive of teachers and education, but at the same time they've got certain principles that they've got to stick to that sometimes don't match up with those situations, and I can assume that things like state funding formula and that sort of issue are probably what you're trying to bring to the table at the school board level. I would assume that you're looking at trying to integrate your knowledge and connections with the way that the state operates into the school board, so that there's a little bit more knowledge at the table. Would that be a pretty good assumption?
That's such a good point. I think that obviously there is a lot of qualified individuals that run for school board all of the time, all over the state. And very rarely do teachers and principals get to have a seat on a school board because they are employed by the very system that elects the school board. And so I feel like I'm in a unique position that I come with some of that background knowledge that a lot of school board members just don't have, because they have full-time positions that are outside of education, and they're just wanting to serve their community. And I want to serve my community as well, but I feel like I have a background that kind of gives me a little bit of a leg up on having to do a ton of research, behind the scenes when I'm approving a budget or making any suggestions and allocating resources effectively. I come with some of that background, and I think that in this day and age, there is so many people who just over the pandemic and the last several years, they've just become really really exhausted in their own careers, and so more people were stepping down from positions like school board, just kind of out of sheer exhaustion, to be frank, But at the same time, I felt like I couldn't take a back seat when it's so important that we have people who are really just called to serve and serve in a public service role.
Yeah, and from my perspective, as a conservative who's generally lobbying against massive spending increases in education, and we've had a lot of new spending at the state level and at local level. It's just a matter of how much discretion both the legislature and local school board members have in allocating that money. People see that education spending since, say, 2005 has gone up 200%, but not all of that money was actually discretionary. A lot of it is earmarked and designated by either the federal government or by the state government and the state legislature through policy. And so there's it kind of distorts the situation. And I don't think that there's a lot of knowledge on the school board that can explain that. Oftentimes it's the state blaming local government and the local government blaming the state, and nothing happens, rather than anybody on either side actually explaining the dynamic.
Exactly, and I think that even more importantly, I think that what is the most important in all of this is that the money, any money in education, does flow directly to students and really is a focus on educational outcomes. And so often in some of the work that I do in my professional career, we see there is some really great goals for some of this funding, but how it actually trickles down, sometimes there is a little bit of a gap between what's kind of decided at whether it's the state, the federal, or the local level, and how it actually leads to improvements at the student level. And I just hope that with more knowledge and more understanding, and then if those that know me, I'm going to do the digging. I'm going to look into questions that I don't know the answer to, and I'm going to do the research so that there is an ability to look a little bit deeper into some of the opportunities that we are able to do at the school board level. And personally, I also just sometimes I think that the public thinks the school board really has a lot more, power over what's going on in the actual, classrooms than they do. But I just want to be able to influence policy, help the district make, sound educational and fiscal decisions, and then just, like I said, have that background knowledge to ask good questions when things arise. Too often I think that things, not necessarily just in Bismarck, but just across the state, across the nation, things get stamped and rubber stamped because they think that that's the right thing and it sounds good. But I really do feel like I'll be able to ask some questions from a place of experience.
Yeah, it's pretty clear. My observation of most local government is that even if they're well qualified, they're really terrible at communication themselves outward. And that is one of the things that is lacking. Are there any specifics, getting into the weeds, as we say in the policy world, are there any specifics at the Bismarck School Board level that you have dug into that, knowing what you know about the way things work at the state level, catch your eye?
Some of the specifics, I think, at the Bismarck level, and just to be clear, I actually worked for Bismarck Public Schools and left on very, very good terms when I moved into the department. So I've got a ton of teacher, leader friends and former students. And so I have a very, very positive memory and feeling for I think they do the majority of things right. One of the things that I think that I just have some questions across the Bismarck system overall, I live in the South Side, so my kids go to Solheim, Wachter, and then Bismarck High, and me and my husband both graduated from Bismarck High. So we always say the adage, once a demon, always a demon. So I definitely feel very strongly for that South Side representation that is sometimes lacking on the school board. So I think that piece of it is going to be important, just because there is just, I'll always be an advocate for all students. And one thing that I think sometimes happens in larger school systems, I don't see it just in Bismarck, but I see it across the state, is that in order to be fair, sometimes FTEs and resources are distributed kind of equitably across the district. And I think that sometimes that lacks an understanding of the needs at specific schools, whether it is, I mean, it doesn't matter if it's south side, north side, wherever, but certain schools need a different set of resources and because of the needs of their children. And I think sometimes when we just blanket out the FTEs or we say, okay, here's just a student-teacher ratio, sometimes that gets lost on what some of the unique needs are for needy students. So I think what I hope to see and ask questions about is, are there times when the needs of the students might dictate maybe a different type of allocation of funding, and maybe smaller class sizes here, but maybe can be larger class sizes over here. Obviously you have a cap, but there just sometimes seems to be just a blanket, in order to be fair, everything is equal. And those of us that are educators know that that's not how it always works. People need different needs for different things for different needs.
Yeah, and I think that message overall, I always say that there's no cookie-cutter solution to anything inside of a district or district to district, and that's the difficulty that the legislature has, is that they don't have the capacity to understand what each district's situation is unless those districts are communicating much better than they do, and unless the legislators themselves understand how to process that information. And neither one of those things, I think, happens very often. So we get stuck with these confrontations oftentimes,
right.
And the public is simply gets certain ideas in their head that may or may not be backed up by facts and runs with it, whether or not it's a real situation. And that's what we've seen in the confrontational nature of the school board meetings. Here locally and nationally, and we've got about 3 minutes left, or 2 minutes left, and just real quickly, what are your thoughts on how we can make these meetings more productive?
Oh, that is something that is going to be hard to answer in just 2 minutes, but you are exactly right. I think too often the people that really mean well, and I think they're asking, good questions. I think there's sometimes just it's hard to really understand the nuances of all of these situations, because there's things that happen across the nation, across the state, and that may or may not be happening in the school system. And so I think that in order to kind of get back to more civil discourse and make sure that we don't become confrontational, I think we need to be a little bit more transparent about kind of the communication and the nuance of what is actually going on in the school systems. And I think sometimes it's hard to understand, why somebody, might not yank a student out of class for this, that, or the other, because really the most important thing is to have students in the classroom learning, and that's the primary goal of all teachers, all leaders, is to keep students in the classroom every single day, learning as much as they can from the educators that are put there to teach them. And I think that usually if you come from a place of compassion and understanding, and also understand that the people that are asking those questions, who might be confronting you, all they really do is just care about their kids. And I think that we need to listen to them, hear them out, and then try to speak, thoughtfully with them and have a two-way dialogue. Sometimes that doesn't necessarily always happen in a school board meeting, and so hopefully those can happen off of the school board meetings and answers. I would be happy to sit down and have a cup of coffee with anybody who has some of those deeper questions, but I hope that we can get away from using the school board meeting place as a place for confrontation. Absolutely, and that's all the time we got. We got to go to a long break. This hour has been brought to you by Dvorak Motors, where you're family for a lifetime. Big boy, get in line. It moves fast. And Hit Inc., independence, dignity, respect. Hit Inc. We'll be back after the top of the hour with Rick Guion.
Talk of wherever you go. Download the free SuperTalk 1270 app in the App Store or Google Play today. Welcome back to Talk of the Town with Steve Bakken on SuperTalk 1270.
Good morning. My name is Dustin Gawrylow again, and I am filling in for Steve Bakken. In this hour, we're going to talk to Rick Guion, who is with North Dakota Voters First. Rick is a guy I've known for a very, very long time. I first met him when he was communications director for a different party, and but now he is the executive director of the North Dakota Voters First organization. If you've got any questions for Rick, the phone number here at the studio is 701-663-1270. Rick, how you doing today?
I'm doing well, Dustin. Thanks for having me on today.
Yeah, well, we got a quick show with short segments, but I wanted to get you in, as I always do when I'm filling in for somebody, to talk about what we're seeing on the horizon here in North Dakota as far as attacks on the initiated measure process and the powers reserved to the people by our North Dakota state constitution. I'll throw it to you at that point.
Well, as you know, you and I are both very interested in that subject and are very big proponents and advocates for the initiated measure system in the state of North Dakota, which we feel has worked tremendously on the people's behalf over the years. It's brought us the Bank of North Dakota legacy fund that was legislative, which is another way to do these things, oil extraction tax, certain things like that, repealing prohibition in 1932. And so, yes, we feel that protecting our state constitution and those are the type of things that we're advocating for. There's a special interest, an elite special interest group that's actually calling themselves Protect North Dakota's Constitution, but we feel that's very hypocritical because they're actually trying to damage the initiated measure process in North Dakota by going from a simple majority to pass constitutional initiated measures, which is 50% plus one, the normal, how you vote in the state in most things, to 60% level. We feel that not only infringes on the state constitution, it would then create minority rule where the 40% would actually be successful. And also it's hypocritical because they're asking for us to go to 60%, but they want a simple majority, 50 plus one. They want a one subject rule in their initiated measure, but they're actually maybe two subjects in theirs. And I think you and I feel kind of the same way on some of these things. So I don't know if you have any strong feelings you can add to some of those things as well.
Well, absolutely. Yeah, there's a lot of hypocrisy going on. And I've been fighting the attempts mostly by the legislature to make the initiated measure process more difficult since 2013 session. You talk about the name of the folks that are pushing this 60% measure, and I take a little bit of personal umbrage to that name because I, from 2013 to 2020, have been using the moniker of Protect ND to oppose the efforts to attack the powers reserved to the people by our state constitution. And, in 2020, I led the campaign against Measure 2, which was an effort to give the legislature the power to veto the vote of the people once they vote yes on a particular constitutional measure. And the folks now that are promoting the idea that we need to go from a simple majority to 60% pretty much stole the name of the organization and the brand that I was using with the Protect ND. So I kind of take that a little bit personally, and I think that is a very good indicator of the intellectual dishonesty that is promoted by the folks that are promoting this idea of giving the citizens an opportunity to vote away their own rights. And that's really the way that I see it. is that the folks that try to make the process to do initiated measures more difficult are literally asking the people and the voters and the taxpayers of North Dakota to vote away their own rights.
Yeah, I mean, why would citizens vote to make it more difficult for themselves to pass initiated measures? This is the voters' check on their government at the end of the day when you talk about, repealing prohibition back in 1932. And I know that goes back a ways, but if you enjoy a cool one on a Friday night like many North Dakotans like to, I mean, that's a big deal. The Bank of North Dakota financially has been huge. You talk about anti-corporate farming laws, that was, I think, in 2014. That's huge. People support anti-corporate farming laws in North Dakota. I think that passed by nearly 70%. So we see the people coming out in droves oftentimes to support measures that legislators, people feel that they don't have it correct, or they want to add something to their government. They want to improve government, which oftentimes the legislature doesn't get the job done. And so this is the citizens' opportunity to say, hey, look, we want it this way, and we're going to propose an idea, bring it to the ballot box, pass it by a simple majority. Oftentimes, these things pass by, a couple of points. You look at the Ethics Commission, I think that passed 53%. Repealing prohibition was 57%, not quite 60%. And so sometimes the 60% oftentimes would really inhibit the people's ability to improve their government. And it's the check on their government. And so I think before people, if this gets on the ballot, before they go into the voting booth, need to think about these things really in-depthly.
Absolutely. The ability for voters, the reason that we have a direct democracy tool in North Dakota is so that the voters can set the framework and the terms and conditions that the legislature and the governor operate by. And if we do not maintain the ability to set the terms of our elected officials, they're going to get out of control even more than they already are. And you look at right now, it's still being processed by the Secretary of State, and we were going to have Joe Miller on earlier, but he had to cancel the term limits measure. They got 46,000 signatures in favor of placing term limits on legislators and on the governor. Now, I could go either way on term limits myself. I understand both sides. I can argue both sides depending on which day of the week it is. But term limits is a very distinct issue where it is the ability of the citizens to set the rules for their elected officials. And in the situation of if the 60% rule was in place, instead of a majority of North Dakotans being able to say, yes, we want term limits, it would take 60%. And you've got a situation where 40% could override the will of 59%. And that's just not an American concept. The idea that just over 40% could override the people is no better than the legislature being able to override the people. We live in a democracy or we live in a republic, but the democracy is the way that we create our government and the way that we select our elected officials. And North Dakota is one of the best states for allowing citizens to get involved, and it's got the lowest overhead for getting involved. And in fact, we've talked about it many times that when you make it more difficult to do measures, all you do is make it more costly, and that's going to invite more out-of-state money. And these folks talk about how they want to oppose the out-of-state money. In fact, what they want to put in place would require more money to come in.
And some of the groups funding this have members from out of state. So, I mean, there's some hypocrisy there as well. And back to minority rule, this could set a really dangerous precedent for our voting system in North Dakota. There are two types of initiated measure, well, three, I guess, because one comes out of the legislature, but they're talking about constitutional, but this could trickle down into statutory, which affects century code, and it takes half the signatures to get that on the ballot. So that could set a dangerous precedent not only for the other initiated measure apparatus in place, apparati, I don't know.
The plural.
There's always this government jargon, you know.
Yes.
But it could set a dangerous precedent just for the voting system in general, and we're just seeing this as unnecessary. I mean, the initiated measure system has worked for North Dakota for well over 100 years, and as we're seeing as we kind of move along here, there are Republicans, conservatives, independents, libertarians, progressives that are coming out against this thing, a lot of them, because they see this as just dangerous for how the state constitution, the framework for the government in North Dakota is set up. And so I'm pretty confident that the people will vote or not support this thing.
Absolutely. And we've got a break coming up. Rick, can you stick with us for a couple minutes after the break?
You bet.
Okay. This is Talk on the Town. I'm Dustin Gawrylow, filling in for Steve Bakken. This hour is brought to you by Dvorak Motors, where your family for a lifetime. Big boy, get in line. It moves fast. And Hit Inc., independence, dignity, respect. Hit Inc. If you have any questions for Rick about this issue, call in at 701-663-1270.
Talk of the Town with Steve Bakken on Super Talk 1270. Talk of the Town.
A quarter talk 1270.
Talk of the Town with Steve Bakken on Super Talk 1270.
Good morning again. My name is Dustin Gawrylow, filling in for Steve Bakken, and we are finishing up with Rick Guion with North Dakota Voters First, talking about the attacks on the initiated measure process and the attempts to limit the citizens' ability to influence their own government. And with just a couple minutes left here in the hour, or in the half hour, I think that discussing the timelines of what's going on is a good way to close this out. The folks that are collecting signatures to make it harder to do initiated measures on the constitutional side have until about mid-April roughly to get their signatures in, and then they will, if they meet their deadline, they'll be on the November ballot. Obviously, once that happens next time after that, when I'm in here, we'll have to get you over here to Bismarck one time in the period between April and November. But what do you see as being the overall mood of folks that you've been talking to, and you've been going around talking to different groups, and what are you hearing from those groups?
Well, I live in the east here in Fargo, and I'm glad we took a break there because I had to turn my heater up because it's, I think, 1 degree here and 1 degree in Bismarck, although I think you guys are supposed to warm up to near 50 tomorrow, and I'm very jealous, so that gives me more incentive to go to Bismarck and meet up. But, yeah, we've been going around speaking at different groups, League of Women Voters, mainly in Fargo, other civic groups that are interested in this sort of thing, and it is a little early to hear about some of these measures, but we're finding, at least over here, that people are against this. I mean, people don't want to give up their right to propose ideas and pass ideas at the ballot box, which is in our state constitution. And so I think we're very confident that this thing will, if they do get their signatures in time, be defeated at the ballot box. And I think you're seeing some of that out west too, Dustin. And I do travel to my family's from the Mott Regent area of North Dakota, so both Dustin and I are from the southwestern part of the state and have weird last names that start with G, and so I guess we have that in common as well as being against this measure. But I think you're seeing some of that too, aren't you?
Oh, yeah, absolutely. I think that the dynamic with the term limits is especially going to be powerful because I see that passing with flying colors. You know, I've been predicting 68%. I haven't put any money on it, but I think that that's going to be a very strong incentivizer. The dynamic is that the conservative Republican crowd is split on this issue, and you've got some in the establishment that are in favor of curtailing it. But on the other hand, you've also got some who are moderate Republicans that understand that if they touch this, they could suffer from that, and it'll cost them. And then on the hardcore conservative side, you know, the Bastiat, Rick Becker crowd, that group is split too. So this is one of those issues where there's no real clear-cut line. This is not a partisan issue. This is not even an ideological issue. This is just kind of a everybody has their own feelings type of thing. And I think that if people understand that it affects their ability to influence their own government and keep their politicians in line, just in generally, that they'll vote no on it. But you know, it all depends on the special interest groups that promote it and how much money they have and how intellectually dishonest they want to be in promoting the concept.
Yeah, and I think you're exactly right there. Your listeners need to understand that this has to do with their rights and their ability to have a check on their government. And so these are things that our organization supports, you support. And I think the more people do their research and the more that kind of comes out about this, and, you know, probably more on the news media side and not advertising side, I think people will figure out that this initiative by Protect North Dakota's Constitution is not good for the people here.
Absolutely. Well, that is all the time that we've got for today, Rick. This hour has been brought to you by Dvorak Motors, where your family for a lifetime. Big boy, just get in line. It moves fast. And HIT Incorporated, independence, dignity, respect, HIT Incorporated. In our next segment, we'll be talking with Ann Richardson about the rail bridge in Bismarck.
Talk of the Town with Steve Bakken on SuperTalk 1270.
Program schedule, updated local news, sports, contests, and more. Visit today at supertalk1270.com.
Talk of the Town with Steve Bakken on SuperTalk 1270.
Good morning once again. My name is Dustin Gawrylow, and I am filling in for Steve Bakken. I will be back here Monday as well. We got one more segment. It's a short one, about 12 minutes or so. With me in studio now is Ann Richardson, who is a spokesman for the Friends of the Rail Bridge, which is a group that is trying to preserve the historical nature of the old train bridge that goes over the Missouri between Bismarck and Mandan. And nice to meet you, Ann. How are you doing?
I'm doing well. Thanks, Dustin, for having me on the show.
Yeah, and, you know, this is kind of a complicated issue that literally goes back 150 years, so trying to do it justice in 12 minutes is next to impossible. But, you know, I've been paying a little bit of attention to this over the last few years, the effort to save it, the effort to possibly somehow move the bridge somewhere else and have it be kind of a museum piece outdoors type of thing. There's talk of whether the entire railroad line could be diverted north or south of town in order to free up some real estate in downtown area. And this latest article and issue regarding this is that your group is making some legal arguments that the bridge may not actually be owned by the railroad, that it may be owned by the state of North Dakota. And I wanted to get into that in specific because that's been in the newspaper in recent days. And, it kind of could you get into the background of this claim? Because it kind of contradicts my understanding of how the land grants worked with the federal government prior to North Dakota even existing.
Yeah, absolutely. So to talk about, first of all, how most of these land grants worked, I just want to start out by saying I am not a lawyer. This is my understanding of the issue as I've read it and learned about it through our work as a board and through the assistance of some experts who are on our board. But me personally, I'm not a lawyer. But my understanding of how those land grants worked is that the federal government transferred the patent to each of these sections of land that could then be sold, the title given from the federal government to the homesteader or to the railroad, which then could sell and distribute them further. And the title goes all the way back. And it's kind of fun to look at the title on your property and see all the way back to its original township and section. And if you've never done that, you should. It's a lot of fun. But the navigable waterways, those are special. Those are different. They did not get a land grant to the navigable waterways. And there's two really important key points to this legal argument. The first is something called the public trust doctrine. This is a really old doctrine that's governed law in America and in England for a long time, called common law, where the navigable waterways and on the oceans, anything that's controlled by the tides, is held in trust for the public by the government, essentially. And this is to facilitate commerce, because if you could imagine, if you wanted to have a business to, carry freight up and down the Missouri River, but some company owned the entire river and said, well, no, you can't come across this river, it's mine, right? So that public trust is the idea that the river bed up to the high water mark is owned by the government, essentially. And that before a state became a state, and that was territory that had been acquired originally from the Louisiana Purchase, that the federal government of the United States held those properties in trust to be handed over to the states when they became states, and that they were unencumbered, that up to the high water mark, that became state property. The other really key part of this is the equal footing doctrine, which is the idea that every state that joins the Union gets the same rights and privileges and sovereignty, as every other state as they had initially joined. So you can't say, sorry, Alaska or North Dakota, you're late to the party, we already sold all this land. No, they had to hold that riverbed in trust to be transferred to the state of North Dakota. And that included any structures that were on the river before that. So when the 1864 Act that created the Northern Pacific Railway was enacted by Congress, it does have language that gives the railroad the right of way, but it's language much more like an easement, like they have the right to cross. It does not grant title in the same way that those titles for the land grants work. So that's why this is special.
So the bridge is connecting two pieces of land that were part of the land grant, and obviously they didn't have air rights back then. And I'm not a lawyer either. I just play one on TV and radio at times. So obviously they didn't have air rights back then. Has that ever been discussed in this whole equation, as far as, because it's connecting two pieces of land that were granted, that the connection becomes a extension of those pieces of land?
Well, so there is something in North Dakota law about, it's called adverse possession. And that is, you might call it in layman's terms, squatters' rights, to say, you've had this, you've used it, so therefore it's yours. North Dakota law does not allow adverse possession of state property. So if there was not a contract that, gave the property ownership right of that bridge retaining to the Northern Pacific Railway at the time that it was transferred to the state of North Dakota, the state of North Dakota owns that structure that's affixed to the riverbed, which was held in trust. And the railroad has used it, of course, for 140 years, but because of North Dakota state law then takes over as soon as that land is transferred from the federal government, now North Dakota law applies, and we don't allow adverse possession of state property. So regardless of the connection or the uses, that property affixed to our riverbed, state property.
Was there any digging into whether the law at the time of the transfer was different than it is today?
At the time of the transfer is different than... well, this law is what was applying at the time of transfer.
Okay.
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah.
And it's my understanding, based on what the Tribune reported, that the state has basically kind of brushed this claim off. Is your group intending to take legal action, take it to court, do any sort of actual lawyer operation to challenge whether the state should be exercising its authority and ownership, even if it doesn't want to?
I think that'll have to remain to be seen. We certainly were surprised that the state wouldn't take an interest in its own right to the riverbed, to say, we own this riverbed. This is our state right. It was transferred to us. We did not transfer title to the railroad. And so, yes, this is an open question of law. I think that was surprising to us. I hope it wouldn't have to be taken to litigation, that, if Burlington Northern has a record of a contract or something that gives them this title, that would be forthcoming. We requested that from them over a month ago now, and they have not provided such document. So, if push comes to shove and it has to go to court, that's not an ideal outcome, but it's something Ford may consider.
I know that railroads, like all utilities, they don't pay property taxes. They pay a state tax in lieu of property taxes that is equalized at the state level. So there might be some interaction there. Has there been any discussion of whether the state not exercising this authority would impact other things that it might want to do related to the river? Things that there's conflicts with either EPA or the Corps of Engineers. Does exercising or not exercising this ownership or authority on the bridge issue impact other issues?
Oh gosh, since I'm not a lawyer, I really can't speak to how that would be impacted. But my understanding is that this is really a specific issue relating specifically to this bridge's unique history, that it was constructed deep into the bedrock of our river before we became a state. And so that public trust doctrine of the federal government holding that land in trust applies. And, there's not a lot of structures, or maybe any, otherwise in the state of North Dakota, that would have that special relationship to the riverbed. So, possibly, but I certainly couldn't say.
Yeah, it's definitely a unique situation, and I can imagine that the state just does not want to get in the way of commerce, because there's obviously an interstate commerce clause, federal level factor in all this as well, because it's the railroad. And maybe the state just doesn't want to open that Pandora's box, and so it's
one
easier
thing
to
I'll say, and I know we've only got a short time here, so I'll try to keep it brief, is that the railway is a very important part of our interstate commerce, and Forbes' intention is never to be obstructionist in that way. The draft environmental impact statement has 3 different alternatives in it. 1, to retain and use the existing bridge. 1, to build a new bridge and demolish the current bridge. And 1, to build a new bridge and retain the existing bridge. We are simply advocating for that option that retains the existing bridge and the vision for the development in Bismarck that could ensue.
Well, we'll have to have you on some other time when we have more time and dedicate to it. This hour has been brought to you by Dvorak Motors, where your family for a lifetime. Big boy, just get in line. It moves fast. Hit Incorporated, independence, dignity, respect. Hit Incorporated. And we will be back after this short break.
Talk of the town. News, talk, and sports for Bismarck, Mandan. Super Talk 1270. Talk of the town with Steve Bakken on Super Talk 1270.
Good morning. I am Dustin Gawrylow filling in for Steve Bakken, and we have a final segment, and we're going to talk to Greg Shue with the Bismarck Bucks. Greg, how are you doing this morning?
I'm doing good. Good morning, Dustin. How are you?
Oh, pretty good. I hear that you've got... I've been handed a sheet of paper to talk to you about stickers and staff and preparing for the home opener. So you go ahead.
Okay, yeah. Obviously, it's a great weekend coming up for sports in general, and certainly for the Bismarck Bucks. Our first game of the season is Sunday, but we're at Green Bay. But we hope all our fans will follow the game online, and we can get off to a good start. And then our home opener here in Bismarck is next Saturday, the 19th. We have the Sioux Falls Storm coming into town. Games at 7 p.m. at the Bismarck Event Center, and we're excited to get the season going. And have a lot of stuff here still to get ready to do. But I know a lot of our fans are excited to get their season tickets and come out to the game and get the season going. So it's moving along.
Yeah, and how many games are in your season?
We have 16 games scheduled, right? 8 games here at the Event Center. And we do have a bit of a front-loaded schedule for home games, so that's great for our fans. We have 6 of our 8 home games actually are between now and mid-May. So there's plenty of weekends to come out and catch the Bucks here.
Yeah, sounds like it. I know that there's always people that need to have something to do around here. What day of the week do you guys play? Saturdays?
We have games Saturday, or mostly Saturday evenings, but we do have the 3 Sunday afternoon games, which are at 3:00. And we've got a lot of ticket promotions going on right now. There's a couple of different places they can download to get some free GA tickets for the next 2 games. And then we do have a new promotion we're kicking off next week called the Bucks Fan Finder. We're going to find a lucky fan, actually 6 lucky fans, to get a pair of tickets to game day if they have one of our Bucks stickers on their vehicle. And we're going to start getting those out into the community. Some of our sponsors in town is where you'll find the information, the rules, the contest, and the actual stickers. And so we're launching that next week. So a lot of good things that we're putting in place to get ready for the season. And we're looking forward to having good attendance this year.
Sounds like it. We've got about 2 minutes left in the show. Anything else you want to add?
Yeah, I would like to, say that, it's, been a long winter in preparing for our Bucks season opener. But I think the fans are going to be very excited about some of the changes that they'll see, not only in the event center, but what we're doing as an organization. I mean, as always, Dustin, we're out in the community as much as possible, our players when they're available, our mascot. And this year we do have a lot of, sponsor nights going on, starting with our opener, which, is on the 19th. So, and that's our farm rescue night. So, hopefully the fans, get on our website, bismarckbucks.com, check out all the new stuff we have going on this year. And then also there's ticket information on there as well, or they can call our office here at 701-595-0771.
Sounds good. Well, we will talk to you or somebody else probably next week as well, and we will get people out to those games there.
Good, and we look forward to being on your guys' show every day with our segment update on the Bucks, and we'll continue that on Monday. And next week, I know we have the coaches on there as well to give everybody an update on how the game went at Green Bay this Sunday.
Perfect. Sounds good. Talk to you then.
All right. Thank you.
Yep. This has been Dustin Gawrylow filling in for Steve Bakken. I will be back here on Monday for Second Amendment Monday. Cody Shue will be riding shotgun with me, pun intended. And we will hopefully talk to somebody about term limits and also possibly even Rick Becker. It depends on how schedules line up. This show has been brought to you by Dvorak Motors, where your family for a lifetime. Big boy, just get in line. It moves fast. And Hit Incorporated. Independence, dignity, respect. Hit Incorporated. Talk to you on Monday.
Talk of the Town with Steve Bakken on Super Talk 1270.
KLXX AM, Mandan, Bismarck, a Town Square media station, broadcasting from the View Community Credit Union Studio.
High school hockey, football, and basketball. Hear the play-by-play with Rob Meltzer. It's all right here on Super Talk 1270 and the free Super Talk 1270 app. It's time for Talk of the Town with Steve Bakken on Super Talk 1270.
Or today it's your guest host, Joe Sheehan, filling in for Steve Bakken on